Hi everyone. What I want to talk about today is something I see out there very often. Not only with CZ guns, it can happen with any gun, but we're gonna talk about CZs here, and is the double feed, fail to eject, fail to extract, stovepipe kind of problem. I know these are all technically different issues, different causes, but they kind of lead to the same symptom, which is something similar to what you see here in this gun. You have that bullet trying to feed, and either the chamber is already occupied by another bullet, which would be a double feed, or there is sometimes a expend case locked here, not really completely extracted or ejected. Anyways, this type of problem is what we're going to see how to troubleshoot in this video. So let's understand the different causes that can lead to this type of symptom. So it's actually one of the reasons why it can be a difficult problem to troubleshoot, because you don't have one specific cause that will lead to it. You have several causes, and each one of them can cause the problem isolated, or you can have a combination of those problems, of those issues causing the problem. So it makes it a little bit interesting to troubleshoot. So let's talk about the different causes that lead to this problem. So important for you to understand that as I'm going through the list of issues that can cause that type of problem, I'm not really going over the list in any particular order. No order of priority that you should verify in your gun, nor whether it's difficult, more difficult, or less difficult to do it. I'm really just going through the order of issues, that I know, that I have experienced with, as they come to my mind. Having said that, the first issue I'm going to name here is simply the fit between your slide and frame. If it is too tight of a fit, like if you can't really rack your slide smoothly, right? You don't have very smooth action here. There's too much friction between those two parts. It could lead to that type of problem, like double feed, fail to extract, etc. So why would the fit not be ideal here between the slide and frame? Well, I've seen this happen more often in either brand new guns, even more often on single action guns, because they have a tighter fit between slide and frame from factory, and also on guns that have been coated recently, like you send your gun to do a Cerakote job, or one of those chemical processes, hard chrome, titanium nitride, etc. If the people who are doing the job that don't really verify the tolerances here between the slide and the frame after the gun is coated, it could lead to too tight of a fit, and that type of situation could happen to you. It's normally, how would you address that? Normally, it's just a break-in period. You're going to shoot the gun enough, and it's going to produce enough wear in between your slide and frame in a way that the action is going to be smoother and the issue is going to go away. If it doesn't go away after that break-in period, let's say between 200 and 500 rounds, you still have the issue, or if it is just malfunctioning often enough that you can't really go through that break-in period, it's just too annoying to clear the gun all the time, then what you can do is you go here on your frame and you add some polishing compound in the rails, just to the rails of your slide, of your frame, and get your slide back on the gun with the polish compound in the rails here, and just rack it back and forth until you feel that there'll be enough wearing that your action is smooth. I recommend use like a fine grit polishing compound, so you don't take excessive material off your slide and frame, and don't end up making it too loose of a fit, which is also a problem. But that could be a way to accelerate that wearing and address the problem when the issue is caused by the fit between slide and frame. The next thing that could be causing that type of problem is your recoil spring. So recoil spring, this spring here, as you know, should be adjusted to the type of load that you're using. If you're using too hot of a load, maybe you want a heavier recoil spring. A lighter load, you want a lighter recoil spring. If you're shooting factory ammo, you might just shoot with the factory recoil spring, and so on. But sometimes, if the recoil spring is not really correctly tuned or dimensioned, rather, to the load that you're using, you're gonna have that type of problem. So changing the recoil spring could help addressing the problem. Should you go heavier or lighter? It really depends. I've addressed this going heavier and lighter depending on the load that the person is using. What I can recommend is when you're shooting the gun with your loads, the ejection should be, you should verify for a health ejection, meaning your loads, your spent cases should fall a certain distance from you. If they're falling really close to you, let's say that distance you want between 3 and 6 feet from you. If it is closer than that, you probably have a too heavy of a recoil spring. If it is further than that, further than 6 feet from you, much further than that, you could be using a recoil spring that is too light. But this is really not going to say whether or not that is what's causing the problem, right? You could be an ejection that is, the cases are falling really close to you and your gun works 100%. Same way, like some of this, especially the single action ones, like I know the Tactical Sports Orange, for instance, ejects the spent cases very far from the gun. No matter what type of spring you're using, the ejection is, it's just the shape of the extractor, the dynamics of between the slide and the frame and the way it works on that gun. So that's more of a way to find out what spring is ideal to your load, but it might not really give you much of a hint on whether or not it's causing your feeding, fail to eject, fail to feed type of issues. I just want to say that it could be, those issues can be caused by your recoil spring. So play with different recoil springs when you're having that type of issue. Could help in your troubleshooting process as well. All right, next thing I'm going to talk about is not actually the gun, it's your magazines. So I got a disassembled magazine here for us to talk about the different things that you need to verify to make sure that your magazine is in good shape and not part of the problem. So the first thing is check your followers. Make sure your follower is in good shape. It doesn't matter if you're using one of the grams follower or flat follower from CZ Custom, whatever, that to give you more capacity. Check if they are in good shape. If they're not cracked, or there's not an edge here that's cracked or anything like that. That could be not getting your bullets really aligned where they need to be, perfectly aligned where they need to be in the ramp, and that could cause that type of problem. The other thing is, since I have it in my hand, is the spring. Make sure you get fresh springs in the magazine. Very old springs that have been through multiple cycles, they will be weaker and they could lead to this type of problem. The last thing I'm going to talk about with magazines is very particular to CZ magazines, but it happened with me a lot more in a tactical sport, in a big frame CZ, not a small frame one, but it could happen with small frame as well, like Shadow 2, Shadow 1, SP1s, etc. You want to make sure your lips, the dimension of the lips of the magazine, are in good order. Why? Because if these lips are too tight or kind of open up too much, if it's too tight, it will not let the bullets slip out as it should. It will be more force will be necessary here, and then maybe either your extractor is going to give away, or the slide going forward it's not going to move the bullet fast enough or in the right angle to go into your feeding ramp and cause the problem. And if they're not tight enough, which is what happened to me, if they're actually too wide, too open, the bullets will jump out of the magazine prematurely before they should be released. And then you got a loose bullet here when your slide is cycling. Then you got that situation where the bullet gets, either perpendicular to the ramp sometimes, or anyways, you can have that type of problem that we talked about here. So what you want to see here in the lips is, I'm going to give you this one as a reference. This one is working. It's a very old used magazine, but it's in good order. It's working 100% fine. So you should look at the back on your lips, should be about 9.15, 9.10 millimeter, if you can see it here. And the front will be a little bit wider, right in the front here where it turns to that wider area. On the lips should be about 9.30, 9.3. So make sure that this is in good order, because this could also cause the problem. Okay, got my magazine reassembled here, get it out of the way. The next thing we're going to talk about is the chamber. So CZs are known for having a short chamber. So obviously there is 9mm SEM specification. They need to have a certain depth here, etc., etc. But it's well known out there that you should load shorter rounds for your CZ if you're doing reloads, right? If these are factory, if this is with the factory ammo, then you don't really control the overall length of that ammo. But keep in mind, you want them to be normally shorter than the average round, 9mm rounds you're going to see out there. So I'm going to use an example here. This is a 147 grain flat point coated bullet. It's a dummy round, so there's no primer in it. And the way you want to test it, you want to make sure you do the plink test. You go here and do the plink test here. Let the bullet fall in the chamber. It should rotate free once it's there, just like this one. It should go all the way in. You don't see any light here between the end of your, the end of a chamber here where the bullet is in the case, and it should rotate freely like that. This one, the overall length of this one, in this case, it's a coated bullet, flat point, 147 grain. I'm doing a 1.100 overall length, 1.100 inch overall length. I've loaded out all the way up to 1.12 overall length, 1.125 overall length, and it worked just fine. I would not go much longer than this. If they're not really chambering like I'm showing you here in this blunt test, going all the way in and rotating freely, it could be, could cause that situation where the bullet is stuck in a chamber, your extractor fails to extract the bullet, and then you get a double feed or a situation like that. Right, get the barrel out of the way and the load, and we will talk about the extractor. So I'm going to get the gun out here, a little block of wood with holes in it. I've been using this forever, but you can actually do this with a tape. A lot of people do with tape too. You just get your slide out of the gun, get your barrel, recoil spring, barrel, everything out, and you can use a mask tape like that. Roll, it will work as well. I like to use a piece of wood 2x4 with some holes where, I just put holes here in specific areas. That helps me do that kind of job, but that kind of work. But I'm showing you how easy it is with, some mask tape roll as well. So the way you're going to remove your extractor to make sure it is not broken, there's no damage to extractor or anything like that, is actually very simple. All you need is get your slide in some supported area, piece of wood, or the masking tape roll. Like I said, you're going to use a 1/16 pin punch, a little gunsmith hammer, any kind of hammer actually works, and this hole right here is where your is where you have access to your extractor pin. This holds the extractor, this part right here, in place. So put this somewhere it has a hole in the bottom so the pin can actually go through. You want to go just use your finger to put pressure, to keep the pressure here in the extractor, to keep the extractor in place, because remember, the extractor is under tension. There's a spring behind it, so you don't really want to, let the extractor loose. Just put your finger here, hold the pin with your index finger and thumb, and just little tap until you feel that your extractor is going to come off. There you go. Now, if I pull the pin off, the extractor wants to come out, and there you go. Voila. You got the extractor out. Now, what you want to check here to make sure there is no problem here is the lip of the extractor. You want to make sure this area is not cracked, bent, missing apart, or anything like that. It should be in good shape. The next thing you can see here, you got a tweezer, and you can pull that off. Here's your extractor spring. So, little tiny spring you have here. You can see there. Difficult to say whether or not this spring is okay. Obviously, if it isn't broken, bent, or anything like that, it should be good. This spring normally doesn't suffer a lot of wearing on it. It's a very thick spring for what it is, so you shouldn't have any type of problem with this spring getting too weak or anything like this. But I've seen situations where replacing this spring by an extra power extractor spring does help, does make the problem go away. So you could try that as well. And the other thing here is, since you got the extractor out, see, I keep the pin in place. I did not even take the pin completely out, because then when I put the extractor back, it's easy to just punch it back and put it in place. But you want to clean this whole area too. The extractor channel here, you make sure you got, you know, a good nylon brush and some cloth. You might use some solvent if you like to, but make sure this area is completely clean. There's no, your extractor's not dragging on anything here. Normally you get a lot of you know, dirt and burnt powder and all accumulated in this area, which creates more friction with the extractor. Here inside where the extractor is going to be laying in, you want that area to be completely clean, very well clean. Obviously clean your extractor as well, right? This is all part of the troubleshooting this type of problem. So now in order to get the extractor back, I'm going to put my spring back there. Really easy. Get the extractor back here. A specific position it goes in. You can see here the way it is positioned. I'm going to push it back, use my thumb of the right hand and the thumb of left hand to just, right hand will push it backwards, left hand will push it in against the spring to put tension there. And once it's in with tension, I'm going to use the 1/16 punch pin to put it in place again, put it to lock the extractor in place, and then turn it upside down, hold with your fingers like that. And here's where you need to do, you can use your finger here, index finger here, to hold the extractor in case when you punch, the pin doesn't go deep enough to lock it in place and replace the punch pin, and it'll try to fly away. But just hold it like that. This is just a little bit of like a confident hit, not too hard. Normally you don't want to hit with the hard part of the hammer if you have like a Teflon or plastic, so you don't, if you miss it or anything, you don't mar your slide. So hit with the plastic area, and one confident hit, that's it, and it will take the pin off. The extractor pin is going to replace, it's going to push the punch pin out, and your extractor is back in place. I'm just going to drive that pin all the way down. There we go. Done. So one thing I forgot to mention, it's important when talking about the extractor and the fact that you can replace the extractor spring by an extra power extractor spring. Yes, sometimes it will fix that problem, but you need to be aware of a couple things when you go with that option, with an extra power extractor spring. If that spring is too powerful, there is a lot more power in that spring than the OEM extractor spring. What you could run into is your gun maybe you won't go into battery anymore. What I'm talking about is this. If you got a dummy around here, put in the chamber just to show you that. And by the way, if you're ever doing that, putting a bullet in the chamber like this directly, do not drop your slide. Do not just take this slide, stop off and let the slide drop, because you can actually break your extractor by doing that. But okay, if I go slowly here, you're gonna see what I'm talking about. So the gun doesn't go into battery. It's not real. The slide doesn't close completely, and it's not closing because the extractor is not, there's pressure enough, tension enough in the extractor not to give and capture the rim of the bullet and then close the slide completely. So this could be a problem that you run into if you use too powerful of an extractor spring. The other thing is you're putting more stress on your extractor when you put on the lip of the extractor when you put an extra power extractor spring here. If it's too powerful and your round gets stuck in a chamber for some reason, if you had, let's say the OEM spring is dimensioned in a way that the extractors, there's only so much force that extractor lip is going to put in the chamber, put in the bullet that is stuck in the chamber before it gives and your slide open without extracting the bullet. So it will be a fail to extract, but you're not breaking your extractor, right? If that bullet is truly stuck in the chamber and the pressure, the tension of that spring, it's too much, your extractor is not going to give, and it will try to extract that bullet with all the force of the slide going backwards, moving backwards, and it could result in breaking your extractor. Yes, extractors do break. I'm going to give you an example here of one that is broken that I have here handy just to show you. So this is what it would look like. So I don't know if you can notice here, but it's missing a lip here. The lip's completely gone. It's broken. So that's what happens when you use extra power extractor springs. If they're too powerful and you get something really stuck in the chamber, it could happen. So be aware of that risk when you go with that option. Right, so recapping the different things that we talked about here when it comes to double feed, fail to extract, stovepipe, that kind of issue with the CZ guns. You want to look into different things, slide frame feet. You want to look into your recoil spring. You want to look into your extractor and extractor spring, the overall health of your magazine. You want to make sure your spring is in good shape, your follower is not cracked, bent, or anything like that. Your lips of the magazine are with the correct dimensions. You want to make sure if you're reloading for a short throat gun. CZs are short throat, so you want a short load. Do the plank test like we did here in the video. Or you can, another option is have your barrel reamed to spec. Some gunsmiths will do that for you as well, and that's gonna prevent that situation. It's gonna kind of put some depth in the chamber of your CZ guns. Well, I hope this was useful. It gave you some insight on different things you can you can check when troubleshooting that type of issue. So good luck.